Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. It is time for another episode of the RTI Lowdown. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by my partner in crime, the well-traveled, well-known Chris Lowe. Just got off the road again. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Bob. It's all Sundays get here pretty quickly.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's always a lot of fun to sort of wrap it all up and point ahead on Sundays with you.
Yeah, this first week back in the new year has been, I don't know, I bet it's been the same for you. Re-entry is pretty wild. It was pretty hectic for me this week, but it's good. A lot of good stuff going on, and yeah, happy to be back at it. And had our first show in the new year last Sunday, and we're moving along, and we've got a lot to talk about today. I would tell you first, though, for those of you listening, first and foremost, we appreciate you watching us and listening. If you're watching us on YouTube, on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening to us as a podcast, that's fantastic as well. Just make sure that you download that podcast, make it part of your go-to library. We're available wherever you listen to your podcasts. We have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about the latest developments in the college football transfer portal and, of course, how our team's doing here in Tennessee. And then we'll widen the lens on the portal and how it's flipped the game of college football, frankly, on its head. It sure feels that way. We're going to be joined by a special guest to talk about that, a guy who has become a bit of a celebrity at this time of year nowadays. Pete Nakos of On3 will join us later in the show. Before we get started, though, I also want to say that this episode is brought to you by our friends at the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for great locally based insurance professionals that can help you with your home, your car, or business coverage, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group. They are here to help, and we appreciate their partnership with the Lowdown. So let's talk about an overview of the show today. First full week of the new year, like we just said, and man, stuff is happening in sports, both on Rocky Top and around the country. We have reached the famous final scene in what has been a wild college football season with only two teams left standing, and certainly not the two teams we expected to be playing for the national championship when the season kicked off back in August. And by the way, one of those teams is rewriting the script in how to succeed in this game. Meanwhile, back home, vols basketball's schizophrenic season continues with an impressive home win, followed by a really, really bad road loss, making the upcoming week for Coach Barnes and the boys super important to the narrative of their season. And don't look now, but baseball season's just around the corner, as Josh Elander and the Vols open practice on Monday. But first, let's talk about the transfer portal. It is moving full steam ahead, and after a bit of a slow start, Chris, Tennessee's starting to pick up the pace with some high-profile additions to their roster for the 26th season. They entered the offseason with a lot of roster questions at positions pretty much across the board. Not only losing players who were frankly just out of eligibility, and then there were a few who decided to go early to test the waters to be in the NFL draft, but also a number of defections through the portal. At the time of this taping, Tennessee has lost 25 players to the portal, including key contributors to the Big Orange the past few seasons: Jordan Ross, Lance Hurd, Ricky Gibson from the season before, and Peyton Lewis, just to name a few. And the window for players to declare is still open until Friday of this week. That said, the retooling has begun on Rocky Top, and Chris, it started very slowly, but boy, in the past couple of days, the flow of incoming players has picked up, and as it takes shape, I'd say it looks pretty promising now.
Yeah, I'm always with the portal. Of course, it's new to all of us, Bob.
Yeah.
You know, we think back to this being like when the portal opens, it's almost now like when the signing day starts, and it's still pretty new. You have a better idea of what you're getting because most of these kids have played some have been more successful. In some cases, guys are leaving because they didn't play as much as they wanted to play,
right,
or the system was not what they wanted, or they're moving up, in levels of competition, i.e. Trinidad Shambliss. So there's all sorts of levels of it. But to me, it's still a little bit like signing day in that you don't really know for sure. It's hard to assess it until you get them out there and you're playing in games. You have more information because you do have some tape on them in college football games, which I think was why a team like an Indiana, a team like an Ole Miss can retool it pretty quickly and go from being maybe a team that wasn't a national championship or playoff type contender to doing so. And we've seen that now the last couple of years, team at Texas Tech. If you got the cash, you want to go play and spend and play that roulette wheel in the portal, man, you got a chance to turn around in a hurry. And we've seen that. That's the game right now, Bob. And if you're not willing to play that game, you're not going to play. You're certainly not going to win at the highest level. And Tennessee has been very aggressive. They have done exactly what I thought they would do, what I was told they were going to do. And it's not surprising when you look at the people they brought in, a very heavy Penn State player, if you would say, flavor. Comes from Penn State. He's brought in several guys, his guys from that side of the ball that he coached. He understands what they can do, their work ethic. I think Jazz Coleman, the edge rusher, was absolutely somebody they needed to get. And this is the way I always look at it. I have the last couple of years. Who else wanted him? And I think that's the way you assess signing classes on I guess now it's January 3rd. Used to be first Wednesday in February. I'm showing my age. But now when you get a kid out of the portal, I think a lot of times to me, you go and look and see what they did, what their production was. Were they injured? Were they consistent? And who else wants them?
Yeah.
And clearly Coleman was a kid who could go get the passer. And boy, Tennessee desperately needs that. Somebody that can finish plays and can be disruptive off the edge. And he's that type of player. And someone who could have gone just about anywhere. I mean, he's was right there at the top. When you start talking about whatever it's worth, highly rated portal guys, Coleman was right there right there at the top. 1, 2, 3, depending on what service you look at.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of rewind the tape on this. And I guess the first guy in the queue for us was defensive back Quay Moss from Kansas State, a guy who's pretty versatile. And we certainly know, again, we had a lot of areas of need, but the defensive backfield was going to be one because I mentioned earlier, Ricky Gibson, who really played, literally about a quarter of a game this season and then transferred out. We lose Ricky Gibson. We lose Colton Hood. Jermod McCoy never even saw the field. So the defensive backfield was going to be a priority, and it started with Quay Moss. Didn't take too long for them to follow up, also getting cornerback Kyan Lee from Auburn, and then offensive tackle Ori Williams from LSU. And then things kind of stalled for a day or two. And again, myself included, the patience level, is starting to worry because you see a lot of other schools striking quickly. Indiana, who you mentioned a moment ago, they're playing for the national title, and they had about 12 guys under wing within a couple of days. And it's like those guys are still playing football, and they were finding time to make sure this, was going to be a priority for them. So what's going to happen to our guys? Well, like you said, it changed. What I'm calling the Happy Valley 4 started arriving. It was all on the defensive side of the ball. Like you said, the first one in was defensive lineman Xavier Gilliam from Penn State, followed by linebacker Amari Campbell, which what we always hear is in Jim Knowles's defensive scheme. He has a position called the adjuster, who I don't know if that's kind of like the field general of the defense or not, but that was Amari Campbell, or that was Ahmad Campbell, I should say, his role at Penn State. So he comes in, and then safety Dewan Lane comes in, and then you mentioned him, man, the white whale of this bunch, 5-star edge rusher Chaz Coleman, who is an absolute game changer. And not for nothing, Chris, the guy's got multiple years of eligibility left too. And in this day and age, who knows if that means or matters for anything in the way the portal is and NIL is and all these other things. But man, that's a guy who, I keep hearing, pretty high praise from the standpoint of they feel like this is a guy who at this stage in his career is kind of at the same stage that a Micah Parsons was. And man, that if you're a Vols fan, that has to make you smile.
Well, that's a heck of a comparison there, Bob.
Yeah, exactly.
I look at it. This is another way I look at it too. Is Knowles' defense is not the easiest defense to learn. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but you've got to be on top of your game. You've got to be a fast learner. You've got to be able to process a lot of things. And I don't think it's any coincidence, Bob, that he's bringing in a lot of his guys that already know this defense.
Yeah.
And not only are they going to be a step ahead, they can help teach this defense to their teammates when they get here. That's important. I mean, I think that's really important. You're seeing back end guys, you're seeing safety, you're seeing a linebacker, you're seeing an edge guy. So they've gotten guys from Penn State who play different positions. And when you're going to put in a new system, and Jim's defense has been tried and true, that they've had success building good defenses, and probably better said, he's had success at rebuilding defenses that were not real good. That's what he's been great at, but it hasn't happened necessarily overnight. So I think to be able to expedite that a little bit at Tennessee, you bring in some guys who already played in it. And granted, they've only played 1 year. He was only at Penn State for 1 year, but still, I think that's more it's more realistic that you can get up and going a little quicker when you're bringing in some guys who played in it already. They can help teach it. They're going to be a little bit further ahead, and you're not just completely bringing this into, 35 or whatever new guys.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and by the way, they may not be done because this just broke in the last hour and a half. There's another Penn State defender who has entered the portal, defensive lineman Eni White. And it sounds like, based on what we're hearing back channel wise at RTI, it sounds like some of the incoming Nittany vols, maybe we'll call them, some of those incoming guys are, already chatting with Eni White saying, man, come join us. We're putting together something different here and it could be really good. So it makes me smile because the reason I say that, there's a couple other players who Tennessee added, a place kicker in Cooper Ranvier from Louisville, wide receiver / kick returner Gavin Freeman from Oklahoma State. And then they even got a long snapper in Blake Howard from Eastern Kentucky. So as I mentioned earlier, Chris, 25 out. Okay, 25 guys left Tennessee to go into the portal. We have 10 new guys in so far if you add that long snapper into the mix. That's already the largest portal haul in one season during the Heupel era because Tennessee's essentially averaged about 7.5 portal additions in previous seasons since the portal kicked off, so to speak, a couple of years ago. And it's likely, like we said, the good news is it doesn't sound like Tennessee's done either. Now, we've kind of buried the lead. There's a lot of good things to talk about here, but the pursuit of a quarterback remains a priority, particularly we're hearing today, and you were mentioning to me, I want to get your take on this because it sounds like this was not, in your mind, a shocker by any stretch, but the outlook on Joey Aguilar getting an additional year of eligibility, it sounds like based on what we're hearing today from some other media outlets, that's turning a bit ominous. And so, again, getting a quarterback might be front and center. We know Sam Levitt's been around, came through Knoxville for a visit. He also went to Miami after that. Wanted to get your take on the whole quarterback perspective from your point of view.
Yeah, Tennessee they would love to have had Joey back with what he did in just, what was he on campus, 8 months?
Yeah.
7 months. I don't know that they ever really felt like it was likely going to happen. It's one of those things where, boy, you'd love for something to happen, Bob, but you plan accordingly that it's not going to happen. I think that's sort of been the approach all along with Tennessee as far as him coming back for another year. I mean, nothing's done, but I don't think that's ever been something that they felt like would materialize. And so they have, as you've seen, as you just pointed out, they've gone and they've entertained other quarterbacks. They're looking for other quarterbacks. Prebula at Missouri is another name. I think you're going to see Tennessee certainly being involved with. I don't think they're going to get Levitt. Who knows? The money, much like Sorsby got $5 million plus at Texas Tech, and I know that he had conversations. He and his family had conversations with Tennessee. at this point, I don't know that Tennessee's going to pay that kind of cash. And Leavitt's going to get a lot of money. Certainly Miami's willing to pay a lot. LSU's willing to pay a lot. He's got a lot of options out there. We'll see. And that position more than ever now, and we're going to talk to Pete Nakos, my colleague at On3 later, is such a money position, and yet it should be, because that is the most important position in sports, is quarterback. And if you hit it right at quarterback, look at Indiana Mendoza.
Yeah.
You've got all sorts of possibilities. Look at Shamlis and Ole Miss. I mean, look at what that kid did for that program. Look at what Pavia did for Vanderbilt. So you get that guy in the portal who can be a difference maker. You don't have to be Ohio State. You don't have to be Georgia. You know, you got one guy like that who can change the trajectory of your program in 1 year, and that's why it's so important. And why schools are trying to find those guys, and why, quite frankly, Bob, they're willing to spend big time cash to get them. So that's the missing piece for Tennessee, is they need to get somebody that they feel like can come in, run that offense, be productive. I think it's a must. And they've got two young guys they like. I think both of them are going to be guys that will compete, have a chance to be really good players at this next level. I don't think either one are ready to play next year, though.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, we've been going back and forth on this on my radio show. We've talked about it from the standpoint of, can we ride with George McIntyre or Faison Brandon? It feels like a lot to put on those guys, particularly at the SEC level. Some of the things you were talking about, Mendoza, Shambliss, Diego Pavia, I'd take it a step further, and you were covering this game. If you're a Miami fan, I bet they'd be saying, based on that final drive that Miami had, Carson Beck was worth the money too, right?
But he played, and again, what's the template right now for the last couple of years? Is having a guy, either you bring him in new to your program, like a Beck or a Mendoza, or having a guy who's been there for a while, who's studied, who's learned, who understands the offense, i.e. Ty Simpson, i.e. Gunnar Stockton. You don't see, Bob, a lot of programs out there who are playing a first or second year guy who's a first year starter, and you're winning a ton of games. Julian Sayin would probably be the exception.
Mm-hmm.
But he's got a couple of decent players around him that he's throwing the football to. I think that makes a little bit. Of course, I'm being facetious. When you got Carson Tate and Jeremiah Smith, I think a lot of us could look pretty good. And that's not diminishing. The kid's a really good player. But the template is you better have someone who's played and who's been on stages, who's led a football team, who's got some experience, who's got some game reps. And all these teams we're talking about, they do that. And either you're getting them from somebody else. Like, let's say Tennessee gets a Bravula. Well, he's played. He was at Penn State. Then he goes to Missouri. So this would be his third school. He's been around. Certainly Leavitt would check that box. You mentioned Carson Beck this year, for Miami. But all these schools, when you look at the schools that were in the quote-unquote Final Four, even Dante Moore, I think the Moore is his third year on campus, but he started at UCLA before he went to Oregon. It's nice to say, hey, we recruited this 5-star kid. A lot of people wanted him, like Tennessee did. But to say, all right, we're going to throw him right in there and let him have at it. To me, you're doing almost more harm than good when you do that. You need to go get somebody else. And I think that's what they're working hard now to do. And the other thing, too, is when you throw a young kid in and he's not ready, Bob, sometimes you can't undo that. If you have a tough year, mentally and emotionally, it takes its toll on you. It's hard to undo that as you go forward with that young quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, not for nothing, your buddy, Mr. Kiffin, while you were out of town, Mr. Kiffin was in Knoxville. Did you see that?
I think we crossed paths, actually. I was getting into the airport about the time he was here. He actually had a contingent of LSU's people here to talk to Leavitt. I think that they upped their offer. LSU did. And it's that one's going to be wild, where he ends up, because I'd say he's wherever he goes, he's going to be in a different tax bracket than the two of us, Bob. I feel pretty confident in saying that.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was. I think he was. We essentially. I didn't see him, but I think we crossed paths there in Knoxville as I was coming in. And he was coming in to see Levitt.
Yeah. I've been going back and forth too on this with the whole Liz, and I of course I always struggle to get the pronunciation right, but the Liz Frank or the Liz Frank injury that he has. I mean, the runway for recovery on that is not simple, right? It doesn't always just, he's not gonna just miraculously be available, and even if he came here, it wouldn't even probably be for spring practice.
No, and and it's you go back to some of the kids. Well, you go back to Joey, and Joey didn't play a snap of spring ball. He didn't get here until May, and he practiced with the receivers in the summer months. I think we have someone who knows a whole lot more about portal. Like, there's a reason they call him Portal Pete. That's my colleague Pete Nakos, On3, going to join us here. And Pete, we appreciate you taking some time. I know you've probably got. Are you up to 5 or 6 phones now that you have just permanently attached to you?
I'm just rolling with one for now.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll take you at your word, but I've had my sources there in the offices in Nashville say that you've been known to have 3 or 4 that you're juggling at one time. So we'll take your word for it. So, let's get right to it. Tennessee didn't start like gangbusters in the portal, but they seem to have a pretty productive last, I don't know, 3-4 days. Where do you think they are right now? What do you think they've done best in the portal, and where do they still need to make some ground up?
Well, I think they probably picked up the biggest piece that they'll add this cycle. Yesterday when they picked up Chaz Coleman, the Penn State pass rusher, he beat out beat out South Carolina and Ohio State for him. He's viewed by On3 as a top 5 player in the portal. So that was a huge pickup. And then the other big thing too is just waiting to see what they're going to do at quarterback, right? They bring Bo Perbula in for a visit. Levitt visited this week, Sam Levitt. And then obviously we're all kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with Joey Aguilar. So I think that Tennessee has made a lot of headway, I'd say, the last 72 hours. I also think that there's plenty of questions left to mainly at what quarterback is going to look like for them in 2026. And if Joey can't come back, do they go all in on a Sam Levitt, or do they, bring in more of a depth piece so one of the young guys has a chance to really, have a chance to start in 2026?
What do you think? What kind of cash is it going to take to get a Sam Levitt, Pete? And I know that we have this conversation all the time, the two of us, about the money that's being paid out to get top flight quarterbacks now in the portal. Are we talking 3, 4, 5 million?
I think we're talking 4 to 5 for a guy like Sam Levitt.
Nice. We're in the wrong business, fellas. Hey, Pete, thank you for joining us. It's good talking to you again. Staying on the topic of that, and that is, it's become an arms race, right? We've all been talking about that, and it feels like it's really meeting this inflection point right now. I mean, I just saw today, for example, that Texas went out and Hollywood Smothers was going to go to Alabama. Am I getting this right, that they've gone and put in a better offer, and now he's flipped to Texas? Is that correct?
Yep, he flipped to Texas earlier today. After visiting on Saturday.
Yeah, so between that and, it sounds like Texas has got Cam Coleman as well. And then Chris and I were just talking about it right before you came on. I'm sure you saw, Lane Kiffin make sure he does a flyover into Knoxville when Levitt is trying to intercept Levitt before he leaves Knoxville to go to Miami and kind of reassert their position for an offer. I mean, it just feels like, we always use that term, the Wild West, but man, it feels like at this point anything goes. And is some of this, to your mind, is this born out of what we're watching with in the Final Four? You had Ole Miss, who had a ton, they had the biggest number of players coming out of the portal in this class of 25. And then you got Indiana, who worked the portal well, and now they're getting spoken in the same terms as kind of a legendary single season team right now. Do you think that is also kind of accelerating some of this tension that's going on in terms of how people are bidding and chasing prospects down, et cetera?
Yeah, I think the one thing that is really kind of coming to focus the last couple of years, I'd say, with the portal is, having elite high school talent and developing them, still makes an impact when it comes to trying to win a national title. But especially this year, it seems like the experience and having veterans, even ones that come in through the portal, seems to make a difference when you're playing, 14, 15 game season.
Yeah, that's the thing, Pete. And until you're in the middle of it and covering it, and you're talking to these players and coaches. I mean, 16 games is a long season, and to me, it underlines a couple of things. Number one, you better be deep. I mean, and let's use Indiana's example. Okay, Indiana loses probably, would you agree, their most productive edge guy?
Yeah.
In the Big Ten game, celebrating of all things, blazing the game day. We're talking about Daly, celebrating, and can't play at all in the playoff. Well, he's a kid they brought in from Kent State, and so they played 3 games without him. They haven't dropped off a bit, not one bit, defensively, and that to me is one of the things that sticks out. If you're going to go deep and be able to win 16, I guess in some cases, Ohio State had to win 17 games last year, right, to win the championship.
Yeah.
You better have guys in the portal, and even at quarterback. Ole Miss is a great example. So Austin Simmons starts the season. They feel really good about him. He's a talented kid. They had to pay, I think, a decent number to keep him in the portal after he takes over for Jackson Dart. He gets hurt in week 3. And then comes this guy named Trinidad Chambliss, who maybe is as electric as anybody when the season ends. So my question to you is depth and finding that kind of depth, finding the right depth, the depth that fits in the portal, maybe as important as anybody does now when you're building a roster?
Yeah, I'd say too, Chris, the other thing is having depth at the right positions, right? Like if you're deep on the line of scrimmage, it seems like these days you have a legitimate shot of making a run deep into the playoff. I mean, we're going to see a game next Monday night with Miami and Indiana, and I know everyone loves Malachi Toney and the Carson Beck story is cool, but the reason why they're going to be playing in that game is because of the depth and talent that Mario Cristobal has brought in at the edge rusher position with Ruben Payne and stuff, and then obviously at offensive tackle with Francis Mauigoa. And they're not able to run the ball with Mark Fletcher the way they do without that offensive line, and they're not holding offenses to a limited number of points without that front seven. So it's 2 very interesting narratives that are going to play out when you have, a Miami team that just seems stacked on the line of scrimmage. And then you have an Indiana team that, I think you tweeted it, Chris, it might be like the best story since like Miracle on Ice, and the turnaround and trying to comprehend that is just crazy to try to think about.
It's funny. You know what, Pete, I think on that note, I've been trying in my head to scrub through what is a comparable there. And it's kind of ironic. The one, and I'm dating myself here, Chris will remember, you won't, Pete, because we're old guys and you're not. But I think back to, it was 1984 when Miami played Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. And Nebraska was an absolute wagon, and Miami under Howard Schnellenberger was really just emerging as a program. And they won the game, won the national title, and that was all done without NIL, without the portal, all those things. But you're right, it's hard pressed to find something that matches that Indiana story.
Go ahead, Pete.
No, for sure. It's
the other question I had for you, Pete, was when we talk about the situation with quarterbacks, there's been a little bit of chatter, and I don't know if you've heard much at all about this or not, but there was so much fanfare going into that game in the Peach Bowl the other night of Mendoza versus Dante Moore, saying it could be the first 2 guys taken in the NFL draft. But then I also hear on the backside with Dante Moore, if he's projecting to go number 2, for example, and it's the New York Jets. that maybe he stays. Have you heard anything in terms of Dante Moore's? Is the plan, to your understanding, is he continues to move on?
Yeah, the Dante Moore situation is honestly something I think I'm following day to day right now. I don't really know what direction it's going to go in. Oregon's obviously in a good position to add Dylan Raiola, the Nebraska transfer quarterback out of the portal.
I saw that. Yeah.
The going thought there is if they add him, Raiola could be in a kind of backup Dante Moore-esque role from a year ago where he sat behind Dylan Gabriel, redshirted, took a year to get ready to be the starter at Oregon. But obviously that concept of bringing in Raiola really only works if Dante Moore comes back. But we've yet to hear what Dante Moore is going to do. And I think this might be an off-season conversation down the road, but I'm pretty confident that the 2026 quarterback class is not going to be as deep as the 2027 quarterback class. Mm-hmm. So I would think that Dante Moore probably has more money to make if he goes into April's draft.
Let me ask you, you mentioned Dylan Raiola, and I saw that story too about him landing with Oregon as kind of an understudy. We've had that debate here with Tennessee about, we've been doing, as they do on Sports Talk, everything's in the ether, but it's like, hey, would you rather have this guy or this guy? And every time Dylan Raiola's name came up, it was like a hard no from everybody. And I think it's unfair to the kid. And I was one of the guys that was a hard no because it's all this kind of pretty intentional Patrick Mahomes doppelganger stuff and not about the guy as a player, right? I mean, I don't know if you hear any of that other stuff as well. Maybe we're just getting too petty, but the fact that he ends up landing at Oregon, I think says a lot about, okay, there's obviously talent there.
Yeah, we'll see if it all comes together. It definitely feels like it's trending in that direction where he lands there. We'll see. I think Dylan Raiola had a lot of bright spots in his first 2 years in Nebraska. I think that he walked into a tough spot where he was kind of going to be like the hometown guy to an extent because of his father and his uncle and stuff. And it obviously didn't work out there. I'd love to see what a Dylan Raiola looks like if he can have a year to get ready to be the starter at Oregon. I think that could be really intriguing and look good and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see how it shakes out. I know Dan Lanning and Oregon are doing everything though to hold on to Dante Moore. That is the top priority right now at the quarterback position.
And I can promise you, they've got the cash at Oregon to do that. That will not be a stumbling block, Bob, to hold on. It's about cash, which it's never what's Saban's line is. It's never about the money; it's about how much money, and that's where we are now. Before we get you out of here, Pete, who's helped themselves the most? Looks like Texas is really starting to get going pretty good. I mean, in the portal, I mean, who do you like as far as the 2, 3, 4 teams that you feel like have really upgraded significantly at this point?
I think that you count Texas Tech yet again has put together a strong class. Now, the one thing about Texas Tech is they really wanted to bring in 1 or 2 elite wideouts that could be game changing for them. They haven't done that. They've missed on Cam Coleman and they've missed on Eric Singleton. Indiana's up there. Indiana's throwing around some money and getting some guys that I just really don't think we thought would have been fathomable like 3 years ago. Texas had a huge day. They got Hollywood Smothers, like we mentioned, but they also got Cam Coleman, which is, I mean, that's just massive for Arch Manning. Tennessee's put together a solid class. Got to see how it finishes. I know Chris and I are keeping all our eyes on this. I'm very interested to see how things finish for LSU, but they've definitely brought in like a handful of guys that you're kind of like, okay, those are good pickups. And then, it's the same narratives every year when coaches move and stuff, but like half the Iowa State rosters at Penn State now, like what's that going to look like? You would think that it's going to be pretty good because it's Matt Campbell, but it's also making the jump to the Big Ten. So it's been interesting. And then you got Oregon and Miami, who are typically like killers in the portal, but they went so deep in the playoff that they have really tried to keep things low key. Especially Miami. Miami has not wanted like commitments out there or things like that yet. So seeing what the next 10 days look like for the Hurricanes on the field and in the portal are going to be pretty fascinating.
Well, listen, man, before we get you out of here, who needs to get it going? Who needs to really who needs to sort of pick up the steam here towards the end that maybe has not done as well? I think Bob has one more after me.
Yeah, kind of looking through it. I think, SEC specific here. I'm just, it's kind of tough. I think Georgia's put together a decent class. Oklahoma landed that big time wide receiver, was looking for him, Parker Livingstone.
Mm-hmm.
I think my biggest question mark is Auburn's lost a lot. Have they brought in enough? They brought in enough USF guys where you'd think that, there's no questions about like fielding a roster and stuff, but they also lost, you lose Deuce Knight, who's supposed to be the quarterback of the future. You lose like your 3 top wide receivers. Like, has Alex Golish brought in enough?
Right.
I think that will be a question that we're asking.
Now, I know you're not a judge.
No.
At least I don't think you are. And we talked for a second earlier about Joey Aguilar. And again, there's some other outlets out there reporting that at least some of the back channels, they're saying that, Joey's going for that extra year of eligibility. The word is today is it's like, don't be counting on that. And I don't think Josh Heupel is at this point, but just given the landscape of things, I mean, my God, we talked about Chandler Morris at Virginia asking, he got denied, but he went for a 7th year of eligibility. What do you think puts an end to that? Okay. And I'm even saying it with full disclosure that, it could benefit Tennessee if Joey Aguilar was here for an extra year, but it just feels like between basketball and football, it just feels like it's getting borderline out of control in terms of kind of the ambiguity on the rules.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, I'm not a judge. So I think any guessing before there's any kind of court ruling is short-sighted and probably not the right thing to do. I don't know. The one thing I keep thinking to myself, we saw Trinidad Chambliss and Chandler Morris both get waivers denied by the NCAA. The thing I just keep thinking in the back of my head is, does the NCAA really want to go through another round of lawsuits with the top quarterbacks in the sport that's going to dominate headlines for the next 6 months? Like, I know eligibility-wise, not all the waivers and the information submitted might not be in favor of the athletes, and that's why it was denied. But I mean, all 3 of those guys are definitely going to file some sort of a lawsuit in the coming weeks. It seems like. So I don't know how it all shakes out. I know that Joey Aguilar has some sort of a conference call update tomorrow morning with the court. And I think we'll kind of see how that goes and take it from there. If I'm any of these quarterbacks, though, I'm probably going to file a lawsuit and fight to play next season because I'm going to make a ton more money than I'm making coming back to college than trying to go to the draft right now.
Billable hours, Pete. You got to have you got to be able to stop the run the football, and you better have good lawyers that and the kind of cash where you need to pay for all those billable hours. That's what college sports is all about right now, my friend.
Yep, that's for sure.
Why you need to be a judge, Pete?
Yeah, I don't know if I have time for that, but we'll see.
Hey, listen, man, we're taking it away. I'm sure you probably had about 15, maybe 20 phone calls while you've been on with us, so I apologize. I'll make it up to you when I see you in Miami, but we appreciate you spending some time and offering your expertise. They call him the Portal Pete or Mr. I guess it's Mr. Portal Pete for a reason. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Chris. Always a good time for you, man.
All right, buddy. Thank you. That's my colleague.
Thank you, Pete.
Nakos from On3's, breaking down the portal, sort of in particular how Tennessee's done in the portal, the SEC. I agree with on Auburn. Auburn probably needs to replace. Alabama's another one. Alabama's lost a couple good players. They lost Horton, receiver. Todd Simpson going pro, which we said last week. We felt like that's the way he would lean, unless he decided he wanted to come back and play college. So they need to probably replenish. And really, you look around the league, everybody, because it's just not an exact science right now to say, well, using Tennessee as an example, they got this guy edge rusher. They got this guy at safety. Well, Tennessee's gotten a lot of guys in the portal over the last few years. Some of them have hit, some of them haven't. Let's be honest. They haven't. They spent a lot of money on guys, re-upping with guys that, in some cases it's just bad luck. They got hurt, like a Gibson or a McCoy. Boo Carter is a guy that gave more money to last year. Well, that hit him right back in the face. Now he's going to Colorado. It's finding the right guys, Bob, and I think that's the fit man is probably more important now than it's ever been. And again, the case study for that is Indiana. They didn't go to Miami, and Ohio State, and Florida, and USC to bring in kids. They brought in a lot of kids from James Madison that Kurt knew about, and look at what they've done. So I think that's why it's sort of hard. You could say that this team has filled needs, and I think Tennessee's done that. And as I said, I like the fact they brought in Penn State kids who know that defense. But, I bet we'll all be surprised one way or the other come next September of which one of these guys has really been who they thought they were, and which one will not be who they thought they were. And it's still a little bit of exact science. But, I heard at least 12 was the number I heard, Bob, for Tennessee, that they wanted to bring in at least 12. And where are they at right now? Did you say 10?
They're at 10, yeah.
Yeah. So I would expect to see at least 2 more, maybe 3 or 4 more, depending on who they can get. They're not going to just go get guys to get them at this point, but certainly they want to bring in a quarterback. And I could see another defensive player, certainly if it's a safety or a linebacker.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the number's 10, and some would say it might be technically 9 because the Blake Howard kid might be a preferred walk-on or something like that. But still, I agree with you. We were talking about that earlier this week, that if we had to set a number for the over-under on how many portal prospects come in, I think we put in the number at 12.5, and
right.
Sounds like it's going to net out somewhere around there, which is, that's a lot of positive direction in what I see, that it's not the same old with Josh Heupel, which some people have been saying was going to be the case. And I don't see it so far. So that's good. Let's talk about, for a moment, our sponsor. That's our friends at the Tate Insurance Group. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. And they are just like our vols. They know what it takes to give their all and show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. That's the Tate Insurance Group. Local, trusted, and always in your corner right here at home. If you want to learn more, you can call them at area code 865-862-8233. You can go online at TateInsuranceGroup.com. That's the Tate Insurance Group. Good people, Chris. Got to get Scott on here at some point. I know you mentioned that to me. Got to follow up on that.
No, Scott knows his sports, and his son Jake was a heck of a pitcher, and got a chance to watch that kid grow up. But no, I'd love to have Scott on. And the other thing that's so great about Scott and his company is how supportive they are locally. Of local sports, high school sports, local sports, and he's given back in a lot of ways. I would love to hear his stories. Growing up in Cincinnati, he was an athlete, multi-sport athlete, and how much local sports and youth sports meant to him. So we definitely need to get him on here so he can educate us. Big Larry Bird fan too, which I know you are and I am. So we always talk about the head fake and the ball fake. For whatever reason, has gone the way of the rotary phone, but nobody had the ball fake or head fake down better than Larry Bird.
Buddy, that's my alma mater. He and I are Indiana State Sycamores. Of course, I wasn't there when Larry was there, but got to admit that was like made me proud when I was getting ready to go there. I was like, God, that's where I want to go. This guy's playing there, and of course, he wasn't there when I was there.
Have you ever been to French Lick?
No, I have many friends that have, but I have not.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go. I don't know if he built that basketball court there at his mother's house, where he used to actually work out in the off season. I wonder if it's still there.
I don't know. He's got like a hotel and casino there, and a bunch of really nice golf course from what I've heard too. They've done it's become a destination in the state of Indiana, which in Indiana that it doesn't take a lot. I hate to say it. That's my home state. But anyway, hey, let's stay on college football for just one more minute or two, and then we'll close out the show talking about Tennessee basketball because we have to. Like we said at the beginning of the show, we're down to the final two teams in the college football playoffs playing for that national title. And just like we imagined, Chris, didn't we see this coming? Indiana and Miami going for all the marbles? I don't think so.
Nope, I didn't.
No.
But when you look at it, though, Miami and Pete Nakos really sort of broke this down well. I mean, Miami has what you want outside of just a difference maker at quarterback, which I think Indiana's got that in Mendoza. You always want to be strong up front, and you want to have guys on both edges who can go get the passer, and they've got that. Indiana does, not just Spain.
Yeah,
but they're good on the other side. They're good in the middle. They got a couple of corners that are able to play loose and free because they get after the quarterback up front, and they can run the football. And that's the part of the game. As much as it has changed, it hasn't changed. And that's where, and I don't know that maybe any of us were smart enough, and I'll raise my hand to know that Mario had stockpiled that many good players in those positions where it count. And they were a little bit, the Canes are a little screwy this year. Some of the games they lost, and they lost 2 games to teams they should not have lost to. But boy, when they put it together down the stretch, they played really good, dominant football. And then there's Indiana, who, they've been. I'm going to work on something this week for On3 on them to try to put in better perspective what they've done. And I understand people jump back in your grill and say, it's not that big a deal. You got the portal now. You got NIL. You can do it quicker. That's BS, man. No one in the history of the sport, since I've been covering it, has gone from being a bad football program, not an average football program, Bob, but a bad football program, irrelevant, to being dominant. I mean, they beat Alabama like Alabama stole something, okay? They did the same thing to Oregon, okay? These are teams that recruit 4 and 5 stars religiously, and Indiana's beating them to a pulp. So I think it's one of the more improbable stories in college football in my nearly 40 years of covering the sport. And boy, if they close this thing out and beat a really good, talented Miami team, I don't know that I've seen anything quite like it in college football in my time.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, again, my home state, so I'm pretty close to the situation to know that they were, before Cignetti arrived, the losingest Power 5 football program of all time. Now because of the heater they've gotten on with Cignetti, they've, I think, surpassed Northwestern now. Northwestern holds the mantle for losingest, but I mean, it's incredible. And I got a little factoid for you that's been floating around. There are only 3 teams in college football history that have scored 55 plus points and won by 30 plus points in 7 different games in the same season. And those teams are, 2 of them, they predate even you and I, Chris. Princeton in 1885, Yale in 1886, and then this season's Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, and what you talked about in terms of prospects. So the 4 semifinalists that faced off on Thursday and Friday, Oregon and Miami and Ole Miss each had 40 or more 5-star prospects on their roster. Indiana had 8.
Yeah.
8. So, I mean, to your point about this being just such an improbable story, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, Cignetti's whole theory of, I'm not so concerned about what your, I'm not so concerned about your upside. I want guys who have done it. And man, he's made it work really well.
Yeah, and they're an older team. That's the other thing people throw out there. Well, they're a lot older than everybody else. Okay, well they are.
Yeah,
maybe they're onto something. A better 23, or a kid who's 23, who maybe doesn't have all the measurables that a kid is 19. Maybe you're better off. He's more consistent. Coaches want to know. Coaches hate surprises, as you know that, Bob. They hate surprises. They want to know what they're going to get inside the last 3 minutes of a football game. And they've got to drive the football, and they can't have guys jumping off sides. They can't have guys busting coverages. and they can't have guys taking bad angles.
Yeah.
The things to that sound okay. Those are minute. Well, no, they're not. They add up, and that's the thing. The first time I saw Indiana this year, that jumped out at me immediately is how well they tackle. And I know you watched that game the other night. They just don't miss tackles.
No, they don't.
And rarely do they not have. Is it not a case where they've got a couple of guys around the ball carrier? The gang tackle, stuff like that, just things like that are fundamental to winning football games. And I've had a chance to see them play now twice. This will be my third time live in Miami. I look forward to it. And I look forward to seeing, how they can block. Can they block Miami? Because not many people, Chambliss was a magician for much of that game because he didn't have a lot of time to throw, but he got rid of the ball pretty quickly. But not many people have blocked Miami in a while.
Yeah. To put a bow on all this, you talk about guys who play within themselves, don't make mistakes, guys who have done it before. Fernando Mendoza's line on Friday night against Oregon, he was 17 of 20 passing, not for a bunch of yards, but for 5 touchdowns.
Right.
His QBR was almost 250. The guy was almost flawless. And this is what Indiana's calling card has been. They play within themselves. They don't beat themselves. Again, like I think I might have said last week, they're almost like they've been the polar opposite of what we were seeing with Tennessee football this year.
You said that, not me, Bob.
Well, it's off season. I'm going to stop talking about Tennessee football. That's not possible. Let's talk about some Tennessee basketball, though. Tennessee gets the week off to a good start with a decisive win over Texas on Tuesday night, but then they revisited their personal house of horrors in Gainesville on Saturday, and as a result, the beat goes on for the Vols on the road. Chris, this may not surprise you, but since 2021, I think Tennessee's played in the O-Dome like 3 times, and they've lost every game by more than 20 points. They just can't seem to get it going there. And we'll get to that game in a quick second, but I do want to take a moment and talk about, it felt like on Tuesday night, Tennessee got back on the good foot. They got in the win column after that Arkansas loss. They defeated Texas pretty decisively on Tuesday night, 85-71. And for me, it was really, that was the Jacoby Gillespie show that night. That guy was out of his mind, career high 34 points, but also the Vols bigs. They dominated. They combined, I'm talking about Estrella, Akpara, Carey, and Dwayne Brown. They combined for 35 points and 18 rebounds, and they dominated the paint all night long. That feels like a vintage. That's how Tennessee should win games, is if they've got the inside out working to that level.
But they didn't make the trip to Gainesville. Those guys
apparently not. Apparently not.
I don't get that. I'm being facetious, but that Tennessee to me looks like a team right now. When they play at home, they're going to be a tough out for whoever comes in tonight.
Correct.
When they go on the road, the version of this team I've seen, and I do think Rick's teams always get better. He always seems to press the right buttons, and they get better. And I don't have any reason to believe this won't be the same. But right now, the version of this team I watch play, they're not going to win a lot of road games, Bob. They're just not.
No,
they're not
I
going
agree.
to.
I agree.
And part of it is, and this was a concern of mine before the season, I actually asked Coach Barnes about it, is so much is on Jacoby Gillespie's shoulders right now to be the lead guard, to score, to distribute the basketball. He and the 2 starting guards both had a ton of turnovers the other night. There's so much on his shoulders on the road. It's always harder to play. If he doesn't shoot well, or teams just absolutely hound him, unless we see Ament, and he was better the other night. He was in foul trouble, but unless he becomes a consistent 20-point a game scorer, Tennessee's going to have problems scoring the basketball. And I think more and more teams are really going to go after Gillespie and just continue to try to pile it on him, because they just don't have a lot of options on the perimeter right now. And that's just where they are. And he can't call 1-800 guard right now and bring somebody aboard. And they look like a team that's going to struggle on the road all year long. and finding ways. And when you're in tough places to play, the easiest way to combat that is to go inside, and get some tough twos and get to the free throw line. And that's the other thing. Tennessee does not shoot free throws very well.
Right.
And when you're on the road, again, in tough places to play, you've got to make your free throws. So I don't want to just say I don't think they're going to win a lot of games on the road without giving reasons why. Those are the reasons why I say that this team right now looks to be a team that's going to struggle mightily on the road the rest of the way, unless they get better in most, if not all, those areas.
It's interesting going into that Florida game. I had a chance to talk to assistant coach Greg Polinsky, and one of the comments he made was he thinks this is going to be the Florida game was going to be a tough game, and that somebody, didn't say which team, but somebody was going to emerge that was unexpected and have a big game, because that's what it would probably take, because both teams were scouting the other so well and they knew what to focus on. Both those teams really strong in the front lines, two of the top rebounding teams, the top two offensive rebounding teams in college basketball. And it feels like we got beat at our own game by Florida, because their bigs, they dominated Tennessee. Their big four, Thomas Houck, Chenyalu, Condon, and Hanlogton combined for 41 points, 29 rebounds. Meanwhile, the same guys who had such a big game against Texas, Brown, Akpara, Carey, and Estrella, they had a combined 25 points and 10 boards. And then you factor in, I thought about what Polinsky said, Boogie Fland had his best game as a Gator. This guy's been shooting 36% from the field, 19% from three. What's he do against Tennessee? He scores 23 points, shoots 9 of 13 from the field, 3 of 6 from three, 4 steals, 5 assists. I mean, you add all those things together, including the turnovers, like you said, our guys, Gillespie and Boswell, combined for 10 turnovers. Chris, we had more turnovers than made baskets in the first half.
Yeah.
Just, you're not going to win. And it kind of underscores what you're saying about the whole concept of being on the road. And I looked at the rest of the SEC schedule. There's 7 more road games. And I don't think it's crazy to say that Tennessee may go on the road. They're already 0-2 on the road in SEC play. I don't think it's crazy to say they might be 3-6 on the road for the conference season.
Yeah, and that might be where we sit right now. That might be a good estimate for Tennessee. Listen. Florida's a good team. Florida is going to be heard from.
Yeah.
I know they had lost some games and Flan had not been shooting the ball well. Listen, Flan's a big time player.
Yep.
He wasn't going to shoot the ball poorly all year long. That is a good team, and Tennessee was not really in that game. Once they pulled away, Florida was going to win badly. So the fact they got beat by Florida and got beat badly, I mean, Florida will be heard from. I guess the only Tennessee hasn't lost to what I would call it, maybe Syracuse. But the teams they've lost to have all been pretty good basketball teams. So I don't want it to sound like, I know fans, and I have some in my family, I won't call their names, who get all upset every time Tennessee loses, the sky's falling. I don't think the sky's fallen. I think Tennessee's lost to some good basketball teams. They've not been able to finish games, and they're going to have to be more consistent inside, because this is Rick's, now losing Phillips hurts, okay?
Yeah.
But this was his biggest, deepest front court that he's had. And they went into this season feeling like they could lean on those guys, maybe more than they have in the past. So they're going to have to step up more. They got to be more consistent. Yeah, they're not going to play great every game, but certainly they're going to have to be more consistent, because teams are going to throw defenders at Gillespie in waves the rest of the way. And the way you combat that is you score inside. You get the ball inside. You get to the free throw line. You make your free throws. You get some easy twos, or I should say tough twos. And that's what's kind of, I think that's what – and you got to take care of the basketball. I'd like to see the stats where your 2 lead guards combined for 10 turnovers. How many of those games you win?
Yeah.
I bet you're way, way under 20%.
No, I agree.
And so you've got to take care of the basketball. But I don't think this team is incapable of getting better in these areas and making a run. We've seen it from them in certain situations against good basketball teams. It just they've got to figure out a way on the road. I think that's the key. Get some confidence and get some momentum. Win a couple of these games on the road, and then feel better about yourself. Because if you can play well in the SEC on the road, I agree with what Dane said last week. Dane Bradshaw, when he was with us, the SEC is not what it was last year, Bob, but it's still pretty darn good. Yeah. And there aren't many venues in this league that you're going to go into and just roll the ball out and win. You're going to have to play well.
No doubt. And all the more important that they're going to need to protect home court. They have 2 home games this coming week against Texas A&M, who, by the way, is one of only 2 remaining unbeatens in the SEC. And then they have Kentucky coming in, as we know. All bets are off when Kentucky comes to town. We know they're struggling, but we know better. We gotta be on point for that. I will say one bright spot for that game yesterday against Florida to me was undoubtedly, I thought Nate Ament played pretty well. Mm-hmm. He was fighting foul trouble, finished with 17 points, had 4 rebounds, an assist, and a block. I thought he was as confident and as assertive as I've seen him across the scope of a game for a very long time. And again, he played a lot with 3 and 4 fouls, which I think was good because I think that meant Rick trusted him. It was like, you got to be out there, and he played in control. I just thought that was. I don't think it's all fixed with Nate. He's still evolving, but man, that was a positive sign.
Yeah, well, we will. I look very confident, and I think Rick Barnes does too. He knows a whole heck of a lot more about this than I would. His team.
Sure.
We will see the best version of Nate Ament going forward. We have not come close to seeing.
Yeah.
And that goes going forward in his basketball career. But I mean, at Tennessee, the rest of the season, we will see him at his best. And I think he'll keep getting better. He understands that the team needs him. They need him to score and to be more assertive, to get to the basket and finish. That's the thing. If he can get to the basket more and finish, because he's a pretty good even for the most part, he's been a pretty good free throw shooter.
Right.
But if he can finish and get to the basket, then that's going to open up so many more things for him. Okay. Probably open up his 3 a little bit more, his mid-range game. But I do think we'll see the best version of him going forward. And they're going to need the best version of him. He's going to have to be, if Tennessee's going to make another run in the postseason,
yeah,
he's going to have to be consistently an 18, 19, 20-point score. I don't think that's not a big secret.
Absolutely. The last thing I'll say before we say goodbye is to frame this all up. Very frustrating watching that team yesterday against Florida. But it also ends an incredible streak, Chris. 89 consecutive weeks for the Vols in the AP Top 25. Now, the new poll hasn't come out yet, but the Vols were 21st. I'll be surprised if they're still ranked, but still, the going's pretty good here. We're hitting a rough spot, but let's see what happens. And it's still early. They are one of 8 SEC teams, Chris, that are 1-2 in their win-loss record in conference. By the way, that group includes Alabama, Kentucky, Auburn, and Texas. So, like you said, and like Dane Bradshaw said last week, may not be as tough as it was last season, but the SEC is still going to be very, very good and very, very competitive. And more than anything, Tennessee's just going to have to hold court at home. That's going to be huge. Because the road's going to be tough.
Yep.
All right, man. That does it for this one. Special thanks today to our guest, On3's Pete Nakos. As always, many thanks to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. And we'll be back next week to discuss more portal news, probably. It'll still be active this week. Another big week for Tennessee basketball. And, Chris, we didn't talk about it much today. We made a mention, but we're going to have to start digging in. It's the beginning of the Josh Elander era as Tennessee's head baseball coach. Practice starts this week. We'll be talking about all of it.
Nothing like 38-degree weather baseball openers, Bob.
God.
A little wind, maybe some light rain.
Yes. Better them than me, man. I'm sure you feel the same way. Hey, man, as always, Chris, appreciate you hopping on.
Thank you, Bob.
Time. It's
always
always
look
fun.
forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. A reminder to you out there, first of all, thank you for watching and listening, but make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you download our podcast if you're listening to us, because, again, available wherever you listen to your pods. We appreciate everybody supporting the show. And looking forward to see what happens next with Tennessee. By this time next week, we'll be previewing a national championship game and maybe talking about a new Tennessee quarterback. Time will tell. All right, Chris, thank you again. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And we will be looking forward to joining you next time on the Rocky Top Insider Lowdown.